Okay, so I just went ahead and mixed this up. I used a stirring stick on this, any piece of wood or whatever, just a little stick. Um, that works great. Okay, so now what you want to do is take a little bit and your finger, I don't like to use putty knives for this, and what you want to do is just take this and get it in the hole. You want to kind of push down and then let it be above the surface to dry. You don't want it to be flush with it. You want it to be totally above it, because what's going to happen is ultimately this is going to shrink down and it's going to get inside the hole, and it's going to create basically a divot in the finished product. So it's definitely wise to put it a little bit high, and then when you sand it, you want to keep it so that it doesn't go below the surface when you're sanding it. Now the bottom, these miters here, you want to make sure you fill that as well. If there's any space, sometimes when there's no space, it's hard because it shows up in paint, but there's not a lot of room to put filler. So I just put some filler here, and hopefully it'll, make it nice and smooth transition. I don't like to use caulking on those outside corners. I like to use it on the inside, but not the outside. Okay, it's time to caulk, and I'm just going to use a standard all-purpose acrylic latex caulk. And this is for molding and, it says right here, windows, doors, molding, trim, baseboard. And it's white. I like to use the white because if you use clear, it's kind of misleading sometimes. You could go and do a whole job and then you look around and you see gaps. Well, it's because it's clear caulking, and it kind of makes you think there's nothing there, but in reality there is something there. But this is a white, so it doesn't do that. And this is a brand new tube, I should say. And I like to make this when I don't have really big gaps, when they're just really tight gaps. I like to have a really small hole, basically as little as you can get. You can use this to make that hole, and if you make it with just a slight bit of an angle, just a little bit of an angle, it'll help kind of lay down a little bit nicer. So it's a pretty small hole there, but you can see how there's just a little bit of an angle on that guy. Okay, now as far as putting this down, the best way to do this is there's a couple things you're going to want. You're going to want a damp cloth. I like to use these shop towels, way better than just regular paper towels. I like to have 2 of them. And as you're doing this, you're going to want to constantly keep your fingers moist. So this is more for keeping your fingers moist than anything. And you're going to come across with the angle pointing away from you. And as you come across, you're just going to squeeze the trigger on the caulking gun and come along very nicely and smoothly, and you're going to put the finger right behind there. That's why you want this to be moist. You want your finger to be moist, and it will slide better. If it's not moist, it'll drag on the molding. The caulking will start to drag, and then you'll start picking up little basically there'll be like little pebbles of caulking, and that's no good as it dries. So you want to kind of keep it moist as you go. And like I said, don't pull the trigger too much, just enough to get that caulking to start coming out. And anywhere else that you might need the caulking, now's the time to do that. So you probably don't need anything here, because we already did that with the putty, or the joints they don't need anything, but putty is where you would use there. The caulking here, you want to go from this inside corner. I'm going to work my way out to this outside corner. So I'm not going to go from the outside corner in, I'm going to go from the inside corner out in that situation. And then I'm going to do the inside crack right there, that joint. I'm going to put a little bit of caulk there, and then I'm going to have to use my finger to work it in that joint. And the goal is to have a nice thin bead of caulk. Not too much on the baseboard, not too much on the shoe molding, just right in between there. And if you don't get this area vacuumed out nicely, you're going to have debris, and that's not going to be good. The end result's going to be bumpy. Little pieces of debris are going to get caught up in the caulk. All right, now this is just a standard caulking gun. This is a basic model. It's got a dripless design, so theoretically it's supposed to stop pushing when you stop pulling the trigger. They don't always work that way, but they're supposed to work that way. So I just keep this in one hand, and as I run the caulk, again, make sure that angled point is pointing away from you. Okay. Now, that's one nice thing about working with a brand new bottle is that you have this little bead there. If this was a used bottle, I would have to cut back further, and the bead would get bigger and bigger. So work with a brand new bottle if you have little small cracks. Okay, so you can see how small of a bead that is. Take my finger across. That's it. A little tiny bead. Now I want to get it moist and just do that one more time so that that joint is nice and smooth and there's no imperfections in it. Okay. That's great right there. And it's a little awkward sometimes because of the angle. May not be, the right angle for you. Okay. Now I'm going to use my right hand for this one. I can use that a little bit, put it in that little joint there. I can come back and work that. Put that the angled point down towards the floor and just kind of put a couple dabs in there and then work it with whatever finger you can use. Usually it's your small finger and your index finger. You can use the back of my pinky just to get up there. Okay, now I can take my utility knife and just get in that bottom area, just that little point down there, and I'm just gonna square that up. Right there. Some caulk goes out faster than others, so you can adjust it. You might need to make the hole a little bit bigger if your particular tube of caulk doesn't want to come out so quick. Take my finger. There, just to get all the caulk out of there. What I like to do is take some caulk and just smear it on that freshly cut edge. And what that's going to do is it's going to give it a little bit of a prime coat for when I paint it. And it will actually help the paint stick to this nicely, and it will help avoid seeing the wood from underneath come through. but just make sure that it's smooth and there's no uneven overlaps when you do this. Excess. Okay, as sometimes it happens, you're going to notice that even though you've taken all the right precautions for filling these holes and you've sanded it gently as possible, I noticed that pretty much every hole I could see an indent. So I went ahead and applied a second layer of filler in there. So I'll let that dry. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and mask the bottom edge of this molding, and this is the technique that I have a video for, and you can check that out. I'll put a link to that one. This is a great way of masking on the floor so that you do not get paint on the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and start this, and I actually like to use this particular frog tape. It definitely works better than regular 3M blue tape in this application. Maybe. That's not terrible. My dog has absolutely zero she's, I guess what you would call her would be rude. Okay, so here I'm just going to be painting this part here. I'm not going to be painting all the way around, you know. So I'm just going to be getting that little bit of paint right there on there. All right. So you just want to barely get the bottom edge of that molding. Okay, now, actually this is it's a good thing I'm doing this video because I had some people ask me about this particular technique and they wish they could see me actually apply it versus just showing the results after it. So I'm going to go ahead and show, it's a little hard to video, but I'm going to do my best. So the goal is just to get that bottom lip just barely taped. After you do this, if you look down and you can see that it's almost like a little bit of a raised area right in front of the molding. If you can see that, then you should be good. But if you can't see that it's raised up in front of the molding, then you're probably not high enough. All right, that's good. All right, so look down here and see if you can see that line. Basically, it's just a little bit of a crease and a little bit of a lip up. Well, that little lip up is what you want. That's the little bit that you're on top of the molding. This is the wider of the two of this tape, and I do like the wider for security on this floor, but it does make it for a little bit harder to put down. So You know, I can see right there it actually went above, it went below the molding. So I'm just barely not on it. So I just need to pull off the tape, shift it just a little bit. Got to be able to see that crease, and you got to be able to see the little lip that basically is going up on the molding, just barely. There it is. And then right here, same thing as the, that space is pretty small. I don't think we can get under. So I just got underneath that mold. One of the challenges is getting the tape. So if you put it like this tape, because it's going that way, it's going to actually touch the other molding, right? It's going to touch the other part because it's crooked. So what I want to do is I want to tear this going this way. Or if you have scissors, but you know, you want that tape coming back to you like that. See that? Now, you can use that for the corner, and then just take a little extra. Like this. Sometimes it's nice to lose the roll. All right, so get that right in the corner. Perfect, because you can always take the tape off and redo it. So when it's done, you should see a nice little crease in the tape. Let me show you what that is. See that crease? That's what it should look like. So you're basically putting that tape on and you just have that tiny little crease. And you see I'm right in that corner there. Ideally, you want to be able to slide under that molding if you can. If you can't, which sometimes that happens because it's just too tight of a fit. But if you can, it's best. See here, that's under that molding. And then take another piece. If you're painting this whole thing, and just put the tape right at the bottom of that casing. Since it's straight, you can put that tape right there. And actually do just like you do in the shoe molding, where it's just at the very bottom of the casing, not on the floor. But all right, now this guy here, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go in here and we're gonna just barely touch it to the very bottom of that shoe molding. To get in that corner, what I do is I use my utility knife, but don't cut it. All you're doing is pushing it down. Just push it down. Otherwise there'll be a void back there, and when you paint that, paint will get back there. Should be good. Just for one little extra piece right there, a little extra. All right. Should be able to slide right under this bait casing. Now this one, I'm going to go right at the bottom of it and do just like we're doing with the shoe molding. So it's just barely on the casing. And again, cover that up. And then we're going to do that little bit right there. There it is. So you see how I'm creating that little like V, like U shape there? I'm just basically pulling this taut so I can create a little bit of a channel in there, and that allows me to get this guy in there nice and tight. Press it firmly. And you want to make sure you press that transition too, where it goes from there to the straight. You want to make sure that joint is nice and sealed.
Oh, Cameron. What? Jeez. That was not a graceful walking down the stairs. They are closed. Look at that.
See, this radius part adds a little bit of complexity to the whole thing. Getting around that curve. Make sure your transitional parts are nice and straight, because you can't do this in one piece. You're going to have to do this in several pieces. So these are like 10-inch long pieces. As you're doing this, you're just kind of stretching it, and you're just kind of bending it around the corner. This tape stretches pretty good, so that's nice. And it's a little more workable than the regular 3M tape. All right. This is what you're looking for right there.
Is there anything else I need to take there?
This part here, I'm going to come up a little bit less. I feel like I'm coming up a little bit too much. That's good right there. Perfect. Now, I'm really not going to be painting this, but I'm just protecting the wood. So I don't really think that this is necessary, but just in case. All right, this is great. That's it. We are ready to start sanding these guys. I was really disappointed with these. Okay, now I am just now finishing up my sanding of the second coat in the nail holes, and I'm trying to be very careful to not disrupt the caulk and also not disrupt the masking tape. And I want a very, very light sand. Barely taking it off. This is where that cutting these strips really comes in handy. It'd be really hard to do this with full-size sanding sponge. Just try to take wide strokes if you can, and just kind of go over it. As I get ready to paint the baseboard after putting all that shoe molding on it, I want to make sure I've got all my materials. So I'm going to be using this Arista Shield from Dunn Edwards. So this is actually a pretty decent paint for trim. The latex extender, this is something that we always have to use if we want any kind of good result from brushing. Certainly where we are, we're at like 10% humidity, 13% humidity right now. So if you have low humidity and it's hot, you're going to want one of these extenders. So XIM seems to work pretty well. There's other kinds of stuff out there for different types of paints. This is for water-based paints. So this is not for oil base. The type of brush I'm using, I don't normally paint trim with anything other than like a 3-inch like this. I like the angled sash type brushes because of the ease of getting it into the corners. I like that. But in this particular case, I'm actually going to use my 4-inch XL Swan. And I'm going to use it because I like the actual brush. The fact that I'm using the extender, it should level out nicely. The only issue I may have is some of the corners possibly are going to be hard to get to. So if I run into a situation where I need an angled brush to get into a corner, I'm going to go ahead and grab this. So I'm going to have both brushes ready to go. Now this XL 4-inch will not fit on my favorite paint pail. Unfortunately, it'll fit inside, but it won't fit on the magnet. So the magnet in here is really good for holding the brush, right? So it grabs the metal and then it holds it so it doesn't drop down into the paint. Well, this one does the same thing, but unfortunately it maxes out at about 3 inches, as you can see right there. So, but I just love these things, and I love the fact that you can get the inserts for these. I'm out of inserts for this one, and honestly, it's not a big deal. All right, I'm gonna start painting this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and mix up 1.5 ounces of that. Now, what I'm gonna use is actually a medicine dispenser, but it only has milliliters in here. So I just Googled what milliliters were to ounces, and basically I just said what's 1 ounce in milliliters, and it said 29.5 milliliters to 1 ounce, which is cool. So 20 plus 10 is 30, so I'm going to go ahead and say that's good enough. 30 for 1 ounce, so then I'm going to need another 15 milliliters for 1/2 ounce. So I'll have to do a total of 30 plus 15, and that's 45. So fill this up to 20 2 times, and then between the 0 and the 10 will be 5. I'll do that once, so that will be 45. That will give me what I need. It's ready to go. You know, I basically gave it a little bit of a shake. Been doing this for about a minute or so, just to kind of agitate it, and then go side to side a little. Not hard, just enough to get any kind of sediment that might be there. You know, this is white, so this isn't like a really big, you know, color situation. It's more just making sure you get all the stuff mixed up nicely. So I did this for quite a while, but making sure not to go like real hard, you know, because then you'll get air bubbles in some of this paint. So you want to just kind of go slowly, just enough to agitate it. And then that's good. So flathead screwdriver or a paint opener, that's all you need to open these guys up. So I will do that, and then I will get my stuff mixed up, and we're ready to go. I like to use my flathead on my Swiss Army knife that I always have in my pocket. All right, now since you've been kind of mixing it up, you're going to have paint there, so just be careful. So you can see that's nearly full, but it's not quite full, but pretty darn close. Okay. Just seal that just a little bit. Okay. You might want to clean that if you have a mess there. I don't think there's going to be much paint left, but we'll see. All right. I do like to leave little bits like that sometimes in the can, just because you can take it and use it as touch-up. You know, touching up little bits. All right, so I shook this real well. I'm going to go ahead and put, so 2 of these plus another 5 ounces of it. So 2 1/4 of these. Okay, right there. We could probably get away with just going with 2. Because it wasn't a full quart. But it's not that much that was missing, so yeah. So that's my last little bit there. That's cool. All right. Close this back up. So now the next time you use this, if you put this back in there, you're going to want to know that it's been thinned already, and you may not want to, you know, you may want to just make that note. Okay, so that's what it looks like, and now we just need to stir that with a stirring stick. All right, now I've got a damp cloth here just in case I have a little accident. So I'm actually going to start right here. I'm going to come in here and just work my way out. So we vacuumed it, brushed it off, so it should be nice and clean, and it's ready to go. Now this brush is it's a little bit large for some of these areas, so hopefully it will be, like I said, reasonable. You know, I'm hoping. We'll find out. I have my other one just in case. So ideally you'll start in one direction. You may come from another direction. But ultimately, you want to finish going one direction. brushing and you vacuumed everything off ultimately. Got a little piece of hair right there. This part's a little harder because I've got a small part of the molding. It's not the full width. So I've got, unfortunately, my brush is kind of in between. It's not really. It should be about a 1/2 inch smaller, or maybe 1 inch smaller. Alright, I can't get this brush in there. There's no way. Let's switch. I'm actually going to try this brush instead. See how this does. I actually like to feel this better. Of course, this is getting 2 coats of paint. So the first coat is just kind of a base coat, and then it will be another coat after that. So I don't really need to worry about this cabinet, but the less latex I can get, the better. Because latex and lacquer don't really like to bond well together. They don't like to play well. Try to get a little on the end so that when you come back, you'll smooth it out in your finishing stroke. So for the final stroke, you want to put a decent amount of paint on your brush. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do another coat. I actually just washed my brush a little bit, cleaned it off, and now I'm going to start. This is completely dry. It's been quite a while, so I'm going to go ahead and do a second coat. Got to load this and clean it. It's nice to get the bristles a little wet before you use them anyways, but it's nice to load it up again. Second coats I think go on a little better than the first ones. So I put paint right there on both sides, and I'm going to come across this one here, and it's going to give me a nice finish on that edge. And now when I come across here, I can clean up that edge from the, basically you're going to have basically like a drip line right there on the edge. You want to clean that up. Since I already have paint on that edge, I'm going to come from the corner and I'm going to work my way out. I need to get a little more paint so that I can get a nice clean. And the goal is to have the paint glide and not drag. So if it starts to drag, you need more paint because it's kind of drying, even with this extender. Got a little tiny piece of something in there. Okay, now I can go from the corner out. Wow, paint looks pretty good. It's not a, this is going on a sprayed finish that was on here before, but I didn't want to go through the trouble of spraying this. To spray this type of woodwork requires a lot of masking, tinting, in order to deal with the overspray. It's inevitable. I don't mind brush strokes. I mean, that's pretty much, you know, you're going to get them, but I just don't want it to look bad. The brush strokes don't necessarily mean it's going to look bad. I mean, I pretty much never achieved a spray-like finish with a brush. So, none of my painters can do that either, so I'm not really sure who can do that, but you can get close, but you're not going to get the same totally smooth finish that you would with the spray. No, I mean, not even a spray finish can give you perfect result every time. There's a lot of things that are involved with getting a good spray finish too. Okay, that looks good. Let's move on to the okay, so like I said, we're going to be spraying lacquer this cabinet, so it's going to get a full paint job. But I don't want to get any more paint than I have to on that cabinet, you know, because that's just going to make it harder for me to spray it with lacquer. So when I do the shoe molding, I'm doing it parallel with the shoe molding. Instead of like this, perpendicular, I'm doing parallel. So my brush is actually going with the molding, and then I turn it when I do the baseboard. And that's just to give me better brush control, bristle control when I'm going on that little area there. All right, I just need to take off the tape and hopefully it comes off nicely and cleanly. I'm going to go ahead and start working my way from the outside in and see how that goes. Some of these pieces on the outside are just there to block the brush. So like these outside ones, just there to block the brush as you're painting. Kind of pull it away as you're doing this. I have a video on this, how to take this stuff off, but I actually didn't even do a video of how to apply it. But this is really, this cut line, I mean, is superior. So if you follow my instructions on how to do this, you'll get really good results. But you gotta be careful, the corners especially. You wanna make sure that as you come into the corner, you kinda wanna pull it away and get it to clear that corner. And then, let me see if I can show you real close up, real close. Okay, so you can see here, that clean corner. So I'm actually pulling it away and out and towards me as I peel it off. And hopefully, it comes off cleanly. Another corner, inside corner. So you just want to kind of lift it up in the front and then slide it out, because that's underneath. Look how clean that is. I mean, when you see that stuff getting pulled away, just look at that crisp line. That's pretty cool. I don't think there's much more that's satisfying. I don't think you can get much more satisfying than that. Pulling away and having that sharp, crisp line left behind. That's pretty cool. And I don't know of any other method that can give you the results like this. All right, so I'm gonna just try to slide that out. After I lift up this front, I'll pull it out. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is nice. Beautiful. The corner could potentially puddle in that corner. So if you do, just take your knife and clean it. All right, that's really good. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off. Isn't that just like when you start from what we started with, and then you release this? It's like well, you know, such a great feeling. Oh, watch this. Watch. Should be able to slide it out. There it is. And you could take your finger and just kind of rub that bottom. If there's any furries on that bottom, you take care of it pretty easily. All right. This is no joke, taking this stuff off. This stuff sticks pretty good. It's definitely better than the blue tape, but I wouldn't say it's, you're not going to get, if you put this stuff on like the wall or a baseboard or the floor and you think you're going to get a perfect no bleed cut line, I just don't think you are. It all is a function of how smooth the surface is. If you have a bumpy surface, like walls are generally bumpy, you're not going to get a good, perfect, no bleed paint job if there's any kind of bumps in your surface. I don't care what you're using. All right. Look at that. That's what it's all about right there. What a great cut line. Job well done is what that is. You know, those people that like to do stuff, you know, for themselves, DIYers, this is a great feeling to get this kind of work done. This way, because the way I put the tape on, it's going to be better to release it. You put it on one piece and then you put one on top of it and then on top of it, so it's better to pull them from the bottom layer. As you come up, they'll all come up versus the top layer, top layer, top layer. these inside areas, it's hard to put pressure on the tape to set it nice and tight. But let's see how this guy did. That looks really good. That corner there. Let's see how this did. So now watch, every piece will come up with this one. I won't have to redo it, even though those are, that's just residue from the, the putty, the wood filler, spackle. Okay. Kind of hard to do this in this little area. So each one of these pieces is about 10 inches long. And this is just more residue from the putty. That was really good. Oh my gosh. Gotta let my back heal after that one. Okay. So anywhere where I've got a little bit of this guy right here, I have a little bit of paint that bled out. I'm just going to use my razor blade on that guy, but most of them you can see that's what they look like, just nice and crisp. That looks really good. That looks really good. So this guy right here, I have a little glue squeeze, or I mean a paint drip right there, but that's, oh gosh, I'll be able to take my razor blade and take that out, no problem. This outside corner just barely has a little bit. I mean, you know, you can look and you can find little blemishes here and there, but I mean, that's unreal cut line. Just awesome. Right here is just a barely anything. That guy right there, again, we're talking not much. Pretty much most of these areas are really crisp. That area right there is really good. That looks really good. And that one, excellent. So we have a very good cut line. Paint job seems really reasonable for a brush job. It's very smooth. I do have a few little areas in here, right there. I need to hit that with a razor blade. And I just take my utility knife and just kind of, just barely scratch that guy. And I mean, when I say scratch, I'm basically just rubbing it off. You can see. It's easier to do with two hands, but you can see how it just, it's not even stuck on there really, it's just on the surface, just sitting there. And then take your finger, if you can get your finger in there, just take away any of the, if there's any kind of a, little bit of, I remembered seeing this guy here, so that's just the that corner there. Sometimes this happens where it kind of gets behind the tape, and you know, in that corner. This is common for it to happen, so this is not a surprise. Any kind of corner like that. But it's so nice having crisp lines. I don't think it gets much more rewarding than that. Super psyched.
You take camera out.
I think we're done. Oh, well, I'm going to do that one over there, but I'll do that. No worries. Very good. All right. Well, this concludes the floor. It is complete, and it looks really good. I can't wait to see it in the daytime. Thanks for watching.